Welcome to the Natural Podcast of Selborne, hosted by Gilbert White's House and Gardens. I am Kimberley James, the collections manager here at Gilbert White's house. I love Gilbert White, but wish I knew a little bit more about the natural world he describes. So every fortnight, we take a deep dive into Gilbert White's pioneering 1789 book, The Natural History of Selborne, to learn more about the natural world, both in the 18th century and today. We will talk to some amazing guests and all become a little more Gilbert.
Should I omit to describe with some exactness the forest of Woolmer, of which 3/5 perhaps lie in this parish, my account of Selborne would be very imperfect, as it is a district abounding in many curious productions, both animal and vegetable, and has often afforded me much entertainment, both as a sportsman and as a naturalist.
Welcome back to the Natural Podcast of Selborne. Today we are back to usual business, and our topic today is Woolmer Forest. Now, I'm going to start the podcast with a confession. I haven't actually explored Woolmer yet. I do actually plan to before this podcast comes out, but it does seem rather mad to me that a place that Gilbert White mentions a lot in both the Natural History of Selborne and in his diaries, and is so close to Selborne, I haven't explored yet. So I will need to rectify this, and hopefully today's episode will whet your appetite as well to go and have a wander. So, Woolmer Forest is located south of Bordon, near Longmer and Gretham. So it's very close to the A3. It is, according to the internet, a 9-minute drive from Selborne or a 1.5-hour walk. So get those walking boots on, and it's very achievable walk from the cafe or back to the cafe. It is a biological site of special scientific interest, which we will be hearing more about, if not in this podcast, and some later ones that we've got planned, and straddles the Hampshire and Sussex borders. It was originally a royal forest, which meant that it belonged to the royal family for the purposes of hunting. The letter that we're looking at is number 6. It starts off with quite a general description of the forest, the size, the soil type, the sort of plants that you might expect to find in the forest. Very typical Gilbert White descriptions. He talks for a little bit about bogs and the wood found in said bogs. He also debunks another writer's theory that you don't get wood like the type that he finds in Woolmer Forest down south. He talks about the birds that you might find there, but actually he's talking about them in terms of wildfowl that people are hunting. And he does actually note that some species, particularly things like grouse, are extinct now in Woolmer, where in his childhood he remembers them being brought home for the dinner table, and remembers people hunting for them. So even in the 18th century there was species going extinct, and it was something that Gilbert White was noticing throughout his long life, and he attributes the species loss at Woolmer to overhunting. He also then mentions the loss of red deer in Woolmer Forest, but particularly recounts a story that he heard from an elderly gamekeeper who I think was recounting the story from his own grandfather's time. Um, I think he mentions that basically it's been the same family as the gamekeepers of Woolmer for many a generation. So this gentleman had quite the story to tell. And Gilbert writes about Queen Anne, who is travelling along the Liphook. Well, we would call it Liphook, but Gilbert White spells it Liphock road, which I assume is probably now the A3, which links Portsmouth to London. And took a break at Woolmer, and they smoothed down a bank for her, still called the Queen's Bank in Gilbert White's time. And the gamekeepers brought forth a herd of over 500 red deer for her to look at. And yeah, it turns out that Gilbert White is quite the Queen Anne fan, because he then goes on to call her the greatest sovereign, which have to have a look into. Probably quite telling about Gilbert White that Queen Anne is his favourite. Today, we will be speaking to Bill Wain, who is part of the Woolmer Forest Heritage Society. He will be able to tell us a little bit more about how Woolmer is looked after today, and also a very particular event that happens, which is very much keeping the spirit of Gilbert White alive in Woolmer Forest. So I think with that, let's bring him on.
This lonely domain is very agreeable haunt for many sorts of wildfowls, which not only frequent it in the winter, but breed there in the summer, such as lapwings, snipe, wild ducks, and, as I have discovered within these few years, teals.
So, welcome so much, Bill, to the podcast. Could you maybe first tell our listeners who you are and what your connection is to Woolmer Forest?
My name is Bill Wain. I live in Woolmer Forest and I have done so for nearly 50 years. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not from this part of the world. I have been a town councillor and mayor of Whitehill, which is entirely within Woolmer Forest, and I'm a trustee of the Woolmer Forest Heritage Society and of the Deadwater Valley Trust, which runs through the town. I also represent the British Dragonfly Society on the Army Conservation Group for Longmoor, which is part of the Defence Infrastructure Organisation for the way the Army controls its lands.
Wow, so you've got a huge involvement. I mean, your whole life is somehow connected to
Indeed.
Woolmer Forest. So, how is Woolmer Forest cared for now? It sounds like there's lots of organisations that you're involved in that are looking after aspects of Woolmer Forest.
The civil parish of Whitehill, which is a different parish from the parish boundaries that Gilbert White knew, because they were all reconstructed about 1929, and the civil parish of Whitehill was carved from Selborne and Headley and Gretham, so is only not quite 100 years old. However, 50% of that parish now is still owned by the Defence Organisation Infrastructure, the Army, DIO, and they control the Army training estate, which includes the firing ranges, the range danger areas, which have red flags flying when there is shooting. So the majority of that 50% of army land is not available to the general public most of the time because it's dangerous.
Mm.
This means that all that land has been left untrampled, undog walked, unbicycled, and unmotorbiked because it's an army training estate. And that's been going on for 170 years. And for that reason, the land is much less used by people than the area around it. The Army Conservation Group and Longmoor Army Estate is managed from a conservation view by conservation officers from DIO in Salisbury Plain. They visit the area and they monitor what the army do in terms of training. And the army training in Longmoor has as its intent to train soldiers. But sometimes there are more than one way of doing things. And within the constraints of having to train soldiers, if there is a better conservation way to do one thing where there's a choice, the Longmoor Conservation Group and the Army work together to use that choice rather than perhaps the cheapest one.
Mm.
So, and then within the area, there are special protection areas for rare birds like nightjars and woodlarks. There are special protection areas, special conservation areas for habitat. There are sites of special scientific interest.
Mm-hmm.
There is a local nature reserve. There are sites of importance for nature conservation. And so it goes on. We help to write a local biodiversity action plan. Hampshire County Council's Centre for Biodiversity Information Centre are involved with what happens here. And the conservation of Woolmer Forest is interested in and affected by the Amphibian and Reptiles Trust, the British Dragonfly Society, and one other whose name I can't remember. The Botanical Society of the British Isles, because there are some rare plants there too.
Wow. My gosh, so there are lots of people caring for it, and it sounds like it's a incredibly untouched and, truly natural, I suppose, in a way, area. And yeah, lots of
Yeah,
people looking
because
after
it's
it.
been left without. Oh,
Yeah.
and the other thing about parish of Whitehill, it is the only parish in Britain which has all 12 native species of amphibians and reptiles. So, as well as adders and grass snakes, we have smooth snakes, we have great crested newts, and we have natterjack toads.
Fantastic. So, could you tell us a little bit more about the Woolmer Heritage Society and what you do there?
We were formed about 1984, and our constitution says, but I'll have to read this, to advance the education of the public in the history of Whitehill and Bordon and neighbourhood in the district of East Hampshire by maintaining an archive of artefact, document, digital and photographic material, and to foster archaeological fieldwork, excavation, and historical research. The Society presents monthly talks, organises field walks, excavations, and gives advice, responds to international website queries, maintains a changing exhibition in the Borden Library, and moves into a new heritage centre in the Edwardian Fire Station sometime later this year.
Oh, yes, yes, I've been
Yes.
hearing about your plans for a permanent site for the society. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to be able to do to sort of preserve the heritage of this,
Yeah,
essentially rural area that has so many things going for it. I mean, and even in Gilbert White's day, I mean, not in the letter that we're looking at today, but in a later letter, he talks about the hoard that came out of Woolmer's pond.
indeed.
So there are even, for Gilbert White, there's a real historical heritage to the forest as well as a natural history importance to the area. So I'm really pleased that the society's coming on, and hopefully we'll be able to visit you in your new headquarters in not
That will be
too
nice.
long. So, talking about Gilbert White's, there, how do you keep Gilbert White's legacy alive? I mean, I know that I worked with you a year or so ago on one of your displays in Borden Library on Gilbert White,
Yes.
but there are many other ways I know that you um,
As part of the development of the town when the Borden garrison left in 2015, it was necessary to construct some SANGs, sites of alternative natural green space,
mm,
so that people could walk their dogs and let their children run free without having to go to the special protection areas where there were ground nesting birds
mm,
like nightjars. And the one at Hogmoor especially has been extremely successful, and attracts people from a much
mm,
wider area than just the parish of White Hill. And within that large sang, Hogmoor enclosure, they have constructed three walks of different lengths, and the society was consulted about those walks. One of them is a Roman walk, one of them is a railway walk because of the military railways, and the shortest one is a Gilbert White walk.
oh, nice.
And so there are panels around that walk, uh, telling people about Gilbert White, and the waymarkers on that walk have carvings of woodpeckers and dragonflies and nightjars, um, so you don't get lost.
Oh, amazing. Well, I know what I'll be doing at the weekend then. I'll be walking on the
Uh,
Gilbert White track. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
for the 300th anniversary of Gilbert's birth, we had a walk around the Gilbert White Trail with people in costume, including myself. And we had Ronnie Houston from the
Mhm.
Wakes coming along to give some truth to, yes, we know about Gilbert White.
Yes, so Ronnie is a friend of the museum, and he has the most amazing collection of natural histories of Selborne, which are on display here, which I'm sure we will have him on as a guest at some point
But in
in the
addition, once a year on the Feast of St. Barnabas, we build a bower on the
Mm,
wall down monument, and this is constructed by local school children, the Heritage Society, and the Deadwater Valley Trust, and the local minister is called in to bless the bower once it's been made. And Gilbert White described the building of this bower in one of his letters, saying, amongst other things, it was he believed it to be of very remote antiquity. And basically, these bowers, there was one built on Waldown and one at Brimston,
mm,
and they were built sometime in the year using local materials and timber supplied by the local parishes. And at the end of and they were used as shelters by the foresters
mm,
when it rained or to have their lunch. And at the end of the year, because the timber would eventually rot and decay,
mm,
the parishes had the perquisite of removing the now dead timber as firewood so that they could build another one. So there
mm,
was a new bower erected every year of a habit or practice of some antiquity. And
mm.
we revised that in 2020, and we've done it every year since for now
Amazing.
16, 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that the children who do it at the local primary school are now adult, the early ones are now adults themselves, and their children are coming to build a
Oh,
bower.
really? Oh, that's lovely. So, I mean, it's got a real legacy to it. I mean, it's not just Gilbert White's legacy, it's a
No,
community legacy. Yeah, that's lovely. And what a lovely thing to be able to do. And it brings together all the things that Gilbert White loved, from the history and the community and the sort of more religious aspect and the natural
yes,
aspect. In some ways, you couldn't get more Gilbert White, if you can. I loved you having Ronnie in his Gilbert White
attire.
disguise, yeah, coming to be Gilbert for you is wonderful. So in the letter that we're looking at, is the um is the Woolmer that Gilbert White describes a Woolmer that you recognise? Has it changed a lot?
It's changed a lot, but only in the last 100 years.
Okay.
In 1901, Hudson, who was one of the
Mm,
founders of the RSPB, visited the area and looked south across Woolmer Forest
mm.
and described it as not a tree in sight.
Oh,
It was bare heath,
yeah.
uh, yeah, bare heathland,
Mm,
and this was because partly because of grazing, but also the local population used to gather gorse as furs for heating.
mm,
And other fuel from the area. So very little wood was allowed to grow. It was snaffled locally as a means of heating for the area. And it's very poor land for farming. So it
mm,
was never seized upon or
mm,
developed for farming. Having been a royal hunting forest and people not being allowed to go on there anyway,
mm,
when they were allowed, as the hunting forest as such declined, the land wasn't really suitable for um, farming. However, with the build up of the preparations for the First and Second World Wars, the needs for pit props in the and other wooden timbers in the trenches and for railway sleepers, um, the area has had um, areas extensive of forestry plantations.
mm,
So now when you look across, from Waldown, where we build the bower,
mm.
40 years ago, you could stand and you could see three counties.
Yes,
Now
yeah.
you can't because that was Hampshire, Surrey, and West Sussex.
Mm.
Now you can't because all the trees have grown up and impeded the view, even from that small place. But over much of the Army ranges, the surrounding land where they have safe space for the bullets to go that miss the targets, they put tree plantations in. And
Mm,
so you look across an area now of plantations. But the Longmoor Conservation Group and the South Downs National Park are working together at heathland restoration. So
mm.
there's going to be more heath areas, but the army are keeping some of the plantations because it's useful for army training.
Yes.
That's where
Yeah,
the
yeah.
interaction becomes.
Yeah, and I suppose it's a mixture of working with all those different organizations and the different uses that the forest has into working out, what the future of the, forest is. But yeah, that's so interesting. And it shows you how different, depending on what century you were to visit, you would probably get a completely different experience. And I
Mm.
mean, it's the same in Selborne. We've had a few episodes where we've talked about how Gilbert White would be surprised to come to Selborne to see so many trees,
Yeah.
because um, over the couple of centuries since he was here, the hangar in particular has become much more thickly populated with trees than it was in his day. Um, that's so interesting. So yeah, it's changed. it's changed a bit. And Gilbert White in the letter also talks about things that he in his lifetime or over, the stories that he had been told had declined. And he finishes the letter off with, I think, one of my favorite stories in the book, which is that Queen Anne came to visit Woolmer, and she was traveling on I love this, the Liphook, not the Lip Hook, the Liphock road, um, and had a bank smoothed down for her, and they brought herded something like 500 deer, was it, for her to
Yes.
look at. Are there 500 red deer in Woolmer Forest now?
No.
No.
The red deer suffered from depredations from poachers in
Mm.
the late 17, early 1800s, and the remaining red deer were gathered together and carted, would you believe, presumably drawn by horse, from from Woolmer Forest to Windsor Great Park.
Oh,
And
really?
so some of the red deer in Windsor Great Park now have their ancestors in Woolmer Forest.
Oh, that's
How
so
many were taken,
interesting.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it's only recently, reading one of the letters from Gilbert White, I saw that they were transported by car, because I thought,
Mm.
well, they can't have herded them that far.
No, no, no.
But, so we don't have red deer anymore. We don't have fallow deer. We have roe deer
Mm.
and one or two muntjac.
Yes, which is fairly common for around
Yeah.
these parts. And actually, in the letter, Gilbert White sort of says, we don't have red deer like they did
Mhm.
back then. So, is there still a Queen's Bank? Do you know what bank it was that Queen
Oh
Anne sat
yes,
on?
there's a cairn on top and a plaque remarking upon the name. And each September, there's a 2 to 3 week period of no shooting, no firing at all,
Mm.
no red flags, as the army do necessary clearance work on the rides to prevent fires, and she also allows conservation work of clearing bracken and things,
Mm.
especially for the reptiles. And I am in a local walking group, and every September we make a pilgrimage to Queen Anne's Bank.
Oh, amazing. So it's not somewhere that you can access generally, but it's somewhere
No, not at
that
all.
yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, I like to know that we still know which
Yes.
bank it is, and I think there must be something quite special to sit on a bank and have a drink and a sarnie, knowing that you're sitting in the same place that Queen
Royalties.
Anne sat. And it was specially smoothed down for her as well. I think that's
Mhm.
the bit that I like. Oh, that's really exciting. It's something that I've often wondered when, because obviously the story had been passed down, in the
Yeah.
100 years or so since it had happened for Gilbert White to know the bank as the Queen's Bank. But it's stories like that that do get sometimes lost, don't they? So I'm really pleased to know that we know where the bank is and that it's still it's got interpretation. Oh, that's exciting. Oh, maybe I have to try and put something in my diary in September to try and
I'll
search.
try and remember to let you know when we're
Yeah,
going.
yeah, that would be really good. So, the last thing that we ask our guests is if they have any suggestions about how our listeners might be more Gilbert. So, Bill, do you have a suggestion?
Several.
Oh, give us your top couple then.
uh, Keep a diary or a nature journal, as
Hmm.
Gilbert did.
Yeah,
Join the Woolmer Forest Heritage Society.
very important. Yeah.
Visit the wakes
Could not agree more.
and read the Natural History of Selborne.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, and some of those are things that people that are who are further away can do from afar, and some of them, if you're local, definitely. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you're not local and maybe joining Woolmer Forest Heritage Society is perhaps a little bit far away, they can join a similar society, for
Yeah,
a natural place near them. But I think those are fantastic things. And reading and observing and visiting definitely is a fantastic way to be more Gilbert. Well, thank you so much, Bill. I have to say, considering that I really don't live that far away from Woolmer. I really don't know the area well enough. So I said at the beginning when I was doing my introduction that I definitely need to make a few more walks around this area to sort of boost my
St. Bartholomew's Day is the 11th of June. It used to be Midsummer's Day until they changed the Gregorian calendar. And now we do it on a Friday to suit the school, and we do it on a Friday near the 11th of June, which suits the Deadwater Valley Trust employees. And so this year it's going to be Friday the 5th of June
Okay.
at 1:30. And if you'd like to come along, you'll be very welcome.
Well, there we go. We'll try and get a full, podcast listenership group together to, I mean, that would be lovely. Brilliant. Okay, well, I've got a few dates in my diary now, June, September. That's really wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit about all the things that you do. I mean, we invited you here as part of Woolmer Forest Heritage Society, but I mean, you could have represented a number of different organisations. We'll have to have you back to talk about dragonflies or something like that. That would be lovely. Today's item is very similar to last episode's item, which is we've gone back to Edmund Hort New and some of his amazing sketches. These two are both of Woolmer. This is Woolmer Pond, but this is Woolmer Forest. And the reason that I picked it is it reminded me a little bit of what Bill was saying in the episode, where Hudson, at the beginning of the 20th century, could look over Woolmer Forest and see very little tree coverage, because actually in this picture you'll see there's a lot of heathland and sort of a little copse of trees in the middle and a tree here and there, but Woolmer Forest is not looking overly foresty. And then a bigger picture of Woolmer Pond, which I won't go into too much because Woolmer Pond is an episode coming up. But what I really like about this picture, one is a little person walking in the sort of mid-ground, but also the fact that it's really heavily annotated, which gives you an idea of how Hortnew wanted it to look once it got past the initial sketching phase. So this, like all of our other podcast items, is going in the cases behind me and will be on display if you're ever in the museum.
This person assures me that his father has often told him that Queen Anne, as she was journeying on the Portsmouth road, did not think the Forest of Woolmer beneath her royal regard, for she came out of the great road at Liphock, which is just by, and reposing herself on a bank smoothed for that purpose, lying about half a mile to the east of Woolmer Pond, and still called Queen's Bank, saw with great complacency and satisfaction the whole herd of red deer brought by the keepers along the vale before her, consisting then of about 500 head, a sight this worthy the attention of the greatest sovereign.
Thank you so much to Bill for coming on the podcast, and to Sophia, as usual, for doing all the hard work behind the scenes with the editing. We've got some exciting things coming up in April. We have our spring online nature talk coming up, where we're going to have a discussion on winterborns, mental health, and community with Tim Skies from the University of Southampton. And then on the 18th of April, we will be joined by our first ever podcast guest, Jenny Uglow, who will be here in Selborne to talk about her book, A Year with Gilbert White. Tickets are selling quite fast for that. So if you have not got your tickets, make sure that you head over to our website to get those and for the online talk as well. We will be back. Our next episode will be looking into a subject that has been hinted at so far in the letters, but we've not really talked about it in too much detail, which is hunting and what in the 18th century was commonly called, sports of that kind. So yeah, we will be diving into that topic, and we will see you next episode.